these black-green mirrors can have a lot of play to them, though, especially when you get there's a lot of just, in-game combat decisions, things like that.
How you manage or traverse the Olven Wilds,
Definitely.
grapple with the past, these are relevant things.
Just some cosmetic differences here between the decks. Individual numbers that may be swapped. An extra tireless tracker for Lucas.
It's like Brad has Murder over that, a second copy of Murder.
An extra grapple for Lucas as well. So, yeah, looks like Brad has upped on... Okay. Kind of see what he's upped on to... Yeah, it is those extra... Yeah, the extra removal spells. And... So in this matchup, do we make it to the end game? Like, does Grim Flayer matter more, or is this an Emrakul fight?
Ishkan is an Emrakul's.
Okay, the little stuff isn't what it's about.
You can win games with the little stuff, but I would be much more excited about the top end.
All right. Well, Brad starts out on Vessel of Nascency into Grim Flayer for Lucas. Starts on a tap land.
Lucas would probably ideally want to have Grasp of Darkness in this window.
Well, Lucas will just cantrip Vessel into Traverse. Traverse finds him a swamp. This means Brad's going to get a hit in with Grim Flayer.
Neither player main decking any copies of Deadweight, so it makes it so Grim Flayer has a little bit more time.
Yeah, especially on the play, Grim Flayer seems totally fine. On the draw, you'd have to worry about Liliana just keeping it at bay indefinitely. But Brad will attack for 2, Lucas down to 18. And between this Grim Flayer and this Vessel, I imagine that Brad will have a 4/4 Grim Flayer.
Yeah, by the next turn, by the time it's attacking, it should be a 4/4.
Yeah, which means Lucas can't use something like a Liliana to hold it off.
Still would be able to hit it if you were able to produce a Grasp of Darkness.
Sure. 4 copies of Grasp for both players. The go-to cheap removal spell for these decks. You talked about how they both have dead weights in the sideboard when they need to go up on that number. Brad mills all 3. Looks like it was Traverse the Olfen Vault, Hissing Quagmire, and Mindwreck Demon. So most of the way to Delirium, and Brad will keep the threats coming. Here's a copy of Tireless Tracker. As soon as there's one more card type in the graveyard, that Vessel, let's say, Grim Flayer will turn into a 4/4.
Legacy Challenge players, your pairings.
Yeah, and the Grim Flayer already matters. It's threatening to attack for 4 on the following turn, and Lucas already didn't have Grasp on turn 2. Frequently with Tireless Tracker, you want to cast it in a window where you can make a land drop the same turn, make sure you get at least a clue, but Lucas is not demonstrating that he necessarily has a removal spell.
So land here for Lucas. He does have a kill spell now. It is Grasp of Darkness. He actually had to take a second to pick between Tireless Tracker and Grim Flayer.
Perhaps he suspects that Brad has no land drop, and that's the reason that he cast Tracker on that turn.
Sure. So wants to keep away that card selection. Now there's still a Vessel if Brad wants to go find a land. And Brad actually does have land in the first place, and it's a good one at that. It's Evolving Wilds. That's going to get him 1, if not 2 clues for this tracker.
Lucas getting punished a bit for going for the Grim Flayer there. You don't want to get run over, but the Tireless Tracker is going to run you over on multiple fronts. It generates actual card advantage.
It's both damage and cards. So a swing here. And it'll just be for 3. No pumps there. Brad passes the turn back to Lucas. Interested that Brad did not go for Evolving Wilds just yet. It's not going to matter. Lucas will cast Mindwreck Demon. That will mill him for 4. Gets Enchantment, land into the graveyard. So he has Delirium now. 4 types you see up top there, which means that Mindwreck Demon will not be dealing him 4. On end step, Brad looks like he's going to go ahead and crack Vessel of Nascency. Move him up to 4 card types. We see Ishkana, Liliana, and land. Brad going to go ahead and take the land, telling one there. Adds Planeswalker to the graveyard. Just got Planeswalker, creature, sorcery, or rather enchantment, land. And there we go, sorcery, 5 card types.
And I believe Brad already has Emrakul in his hand. So 5 card types, 4 lands now, be going up to 5.
Scenes 4 more.
3 more. 4 more from right now, 3 more from his next turn.
2 clues. That Evolving Wilds got him a second one. Back to Brad's side. There is the 4/5 demon on the other side of the board. Land gives Brad a 3rd clue. And he will just cast Ishkana, the Graph Widow, making a trio of spiders.
On its own, Mind Rack Demon does not line up very well against Ishkana. The 3/5 can just block it. You can use a Grasp of Darkness to take it down from there, or even a Liliana, the Last Hope, would finish off Ishkana. So on the surface, the Demon looks disadvantaged, though the Therium deck is fully capable of breaking that open.
Lucas plays another. I mean, there is, if he swings with it, there's also the chance that Brad would just block with all the spiders. Another demon, but Lucas misses the land drop. We pass back to Brad Nelson. And I'm interested here on Lucas's turn. If he did not have another land, going for Mind Rack Demon over cracking Vessel for land, I'm not sure I'm behind it.
Yeah, it really depends a lot on what's going on in his hand.
We go back to Brad Nelson. He's going to play Pilgrim's Eye. Gets him in land 6. This is, you see him, both players building up toward Emrakul. Brad has 6 lands, 5 card types. 4 lands, 6 card types for Lucas. So 11 on Brad's side, 10 on Lucas's.
And Brad's Emrakul looks a lot more powerful. Just ignore the fact that Brad is going to get there first. His Emrakul will damage Lucas more than Lucas's will damage Brad. Just Lucas has these 2 Mind Rack Demons, and one of them would get eaten by the Emrakul, and the other one, you know, can't do combat well with the Emrakul after the fact, whereas Brad has Ishkana, 3 spiders, Tireless Tracker, 4 clues, way too much stuff to sabotage.
Well, Luke's going to join on the clue front. Plays Tireless Tracker and a land. Leaves up that Vessel. But still, you're right, this isn't really about the fast stuff. There's no good attacks on either side. Lucas plays Grimflare. That's a 4/4. And still no good attacks. He'll pass. Ishkana, just a brick wall.
Yeah, that Ishkana card, it's pretty powerful. Really, when you look at Black-Green Delirium's matchups across the board, almost every matchup, if not every matchup, Ishkana is the most important card. Exception basically comes down to combo decks.
Now Brad will start going on those clues. Cracks 1. Tireless Tracker grows to 4/3. And then draws. Does not have the land drop, however. So 6 lands and in play, 5 card types in the yard. He's close. But not all the way there.
And he has a little bit of time yet. Lucas really not able to pressure Brad in any meaningful way. Brad's still on 20.
Interestingly, Brad could probably, if he wanted to, just attack for 1 with Pilgrim's Eye. I don't think Lucas will block. There's a danger if Lucas blocks that Brad plays a land and then an Emrakul.
And if Brad really needs land, he can just start cracking these 3 clues.
And there's the attack. Keep in mind, Brad doesn't have the land. This is just a bluff.
This is Brad Nelson 101. He loves a good bluff.
Lucas takes down to 14. It's not even a bluff. It's just realizing that Lucas can't afford to call, right?
Yeah, like connecting for 1 doesn't really matter, but hanging in the Pilgrim's Eye on defense doesn't matter at all. And if it goes to the graveyard, that does matter.
Now Brad's going to cast Grapple. He wants the land. 3 cards into the yard. Did he get another card type? That would be huge if he did. Looks like otherwise he's going to get Evolving Wilds back.
Pretty good, seeing as he still has that tireless tracker.
Those dice at the bottom are the Delirium counts for both players. Yeah, at this point, I don't even know if clues for Tireless Tracker matter. I mean, I guess they do, but they sometimes don't. Brad's going to play and sacrifice the Evolving Wilds.
I agree with your high-level analysis of clue
thanks.
tokens in this game.
They matter, but
They're somewhat immaterial, though until they cast Emrakul, it is another piece of advantage you can press. It's another way to make up for Emrakul.
and you see Brad not even worrying too much here. He's just going to play Grasp on Tireless Tracker, play Grim Flare. He could have cracked clues, but he's got 5 clues saved up, and just not. He'll get around to them.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere. Maelstrom Pulse is not a standard legal card. Even if it were, it's so heavily taxed. Brad has so much stuff that Lucas has to care about.
You know, last season, I had a game where I got 11 of my clues Tragic Air against. It was really sad.
That's a bummer.
It's a bummer.
That card's not
if
legal.
you have a Tireless Tracker in play, though, you know that Tragic Air against
It
makes you
gets plus,
sacrifice.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
you're
It gets
sacrificing
pretty big.
clues. Yeah, it's great.
It's unfortunate that they have you keep your other creature.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to make this deck full of clues and Torrential Gear Hulk and Tireless Tracker, or Cataclysmic Gear Hulk and Tireless Tracker. And then I'm going to do it. I'm going to stack all my clues and I'm going to kill them with the tracker. It's going to be great. You heard it here first.
I've heard of worse decks, though.
Only one of my cards aren't that bad, right? That's why it's okay.
Most decks that are this bad on accident, where you're kind of purposefully making a terrible deck.
Liliana is the play from Lucas. It shrinks down the Ishkana. I just want one turn where I cast Gear Hulk and then 20 someone with a Tireless Tracker.
You gotta dream big.
Because when you have 10 clues in play, you just can't figure out how to win sometimes. Land from Lucas. So now Brad will untap, and he should have enough Delirium plus mana to cast Emrakul at this point.
And Lucas attacked with 2 demons. Brad just took 8. He was on 20. He's Emrakuling.
Yeah.
That's just not something that's going to matter.
7 card types in graveyard for both players. Full maximum.
Missing Tribal. Not a standard legal card type.
That's the weird card type.
Not a decision that R&D is happy with.
It's like one of those adjectives that people insist is a noun. And then you look it up in the textbook and you find out they're right and you say, all right, I guess so. And then you don't care afterward because it was a jerk answer anyway.
Brad having a think here.
He set aside his Emrakul mana. Okay, he'll grasp the Grim Flare. Counts.
Yeah, Lucas is at 14, and he turned his giant creatures sideways.
Wait, we might. Oh, wait. We're not casting Emrakul, are we?
Nah, if you don't have to, right? How about we
Draws
just
a
kill
card
him?
Off Tireless Tracker. Oh, wow. And both. I was on Lucas's side. I assumed this game was all about Emrakul. I assumed Brad was casting Emrakul. I didn't stop to see if we were just dead because of our attack. My mistake.
I think he was dead one way or the other. He wasn't going to win the game if he just got Emrakuled, right? Because then just one of the demons gets eaten by Emrakul. Like, it's absolutely true that he was just dead this way, but I don't think that he had an avenue to win that game.
Well, if Brad doesn't play Emrakul and doesn't win, doesn't Lucas's Emrakul next turn get him back?
Yeah, maybe.
It could. Well, either way, Brad Nelson up a game. 5-0 right now in the Black-Green Delirium Mirror. We're going to go ahead and look at the sideboards. If this is about big stuff, I think I know which way they're going to go. So Brad's sideboard first. 3 Natural State, 2 Deadweight, 2 Transgress the Mind, 2 Pick the Brain, 2 To the Slaughter, a Tireless Tracker, an Obnixilus Reignited, a second Emrakul the Promised End, and then a Kalidas Trader of Get.
Alright, so transgress the minds, pick the brains. These
Yep.
cards are excellent. Tireless Tracker
Great.
coming in as well. Emrakul, probably Obnixilus as well, just more big stuff. I don't particularly like Kalitas, given that it dies to Grasp of Darkness. You know, it's interesting. It can press some advantages, but mostly looking at these discard spells, Emrakul, Obnixilus, Tireless Tracker.
Pretty into all those. Just going to get this beefier deck. Now, what do you lose out of these decks, though? Maybe Mindrack Demon?
Demon seemed really bad in that game. I imagine that I'd be boarding that one out. I'd trim, if not cut entirely, Grasp of Darkness and just make Grim Flayers catch each other in combat. It didn't especially matter. You know, there was Grim Flayers on the battlefield at the end that were just kind of hanging out. That's what's going to happen when the game progresses to a certain point. You run some risk of getting run over by them, but I think it's pretty minimal.
So Lucas's sideboard's similar with a couple differences. He's got the 3 Transgress the Minds as well. He's got 3 Natural State, 3 Deadweight, 2 Pick the Brain, a Nissa Vital Force, a Noxious Gearhulk, an Appetite for the Natural, and an Emrakul, the Promised End. I assume it's the same package, just he's going to use the Gearhulk and the Nissa instead of the Obnixilus and Tracker.
Nissa, Gearhulk. Yeah, there's a small argument for Deadweight if you're able to catch Tireless Tracker before it gets bigger. If you were able to kill an Grim Player in one of the games where it mattered, it's something. Deadweight seems to be a lot about fighting the battle that the game's not about. I think more often than not, overwhelmingly, these games are going to go long. They're going to be about Ishkana. They're going to be about Planeswalkers. They're going to be about Emrakuls.
All right. Game 1 is in the books. So Lucas will be on the play. Back for game number 2. Now, in 2 weeks is the Invitational here in Atlanta, and if you want to come out, we're going to have, of course, an open that weekend starting on Saturday, but you can still qualify at Invitational qualifiers. We are going to be, you can find about those. They happen every weekend across the country. These are from October all the way up to the event in December. The art, when you get these, you get the playmat, the Brass Jaw playmat, illustrated by our own Kristen Plesko. By showing up with these, you can get a lot of prizes, including, of course, Invitational qualification, which is to one of the next 3 Invitationals, so not just for Atlanta. You can use it and then use it next June at our next Invitational. You also get the playmat, you get top 8 pins, the Invitational winner tokens, Max McVitie's or Liam Lonergan's that we're giving out now, and also free Star City Games Premium. That's access to the exclusive articles by your favorite players and writers here on the tour. You can find an event near you at starcitygames.com/IQ.
Love that playmat. Hate robots.
Well, that guy hates robots too.
We'd be like best friends.
Do you punch robots?
Well, that would hurt my hands. I'm not as strong as that guy.
Yeah, I'm impressed. That's impressive.
That's very impressive. You know, some people think about a zombie apocalypse. I mean, come on.
You're more worried about the
robots is way more realistic. The Terminator is the documentary of the future.
So when robots end the world for you, is it AI or is it like the nano bots future? Which is the way it goes down?
I think that AI is more likely. Like nanobots are kind of scary when you're.
So it's like cyborgs taking us over. It's not like nanobots taking us over.
If you grew up dialing into the internet, nanobots are unsettling.
Lucas on the play has a turn 2 Grim Flayer. Last game we saw Brad play one on turn 2 and connect with it a couple of times. Will Lucas get to be that player this time?
And will that matter? If the players do start missing on land drops, the Grim Flayer connections matter a lot more.
Transgress the Mind from Brad Nelson. Does not hit, but Lucas was on a mulligan to 6, so Brad kind of does him a favor and mulligans a card off there. Transgress no legal targets. Grim Flayer will connect for Lucas, so already has a Traverse in the graveyard.
Yeah, and given that Lucas has just an extra Grim Flayer here, this might be that rare game where those guys just get to go to town.
Puts another Traverse and a land into the graveyard. Yeah, second Grim Flayer and Swamp for Lucas. Back to Brad Nelson. Needs to, as we saw before, these trackers these Grim Flayers can run away with the game if you're not careful. And now Brad's going to pay them some respect. Turn 3 to the slaughter takes down one of the 2 Grim Flayers. But Liliana, the last hope, is the follow-up for Lucas Michaels. So she will -2 to get that Grim Flayer back into Lucas's hand. He's trying to keep the pressure on here as he attacks with Grim Flayer.
And with this trigger here, Lucas should be able to turn Delirium on.
Almost certainly, yeah. He's got still just lands and sorceries. His graveyard is only those, but he puts an artifact creature in the graveyard. That's Pilgrim's Eye, so now the Grim Flayer is a 4/4. But no land drop from Lucas. We go back to Brad Nelson. It will be a copy of Pick the Brain. No Delirium from Brad. See Grasp, Grim Flayer, and Grapple.
So if you were to take the Grim Flayer, Lucas could just grapple it back, though he does not demonstrate a way to cast it on the same turn.
All of them start with G. Which one will he take?
I imagine that Grim Flayer will be the pick that we see here.
Unless Brad has some, I mean, he does have Mind Rack Demon in hand, and if that was the case, there's potential for him to just play the Demon and say, I have a 4/5 to block your 4/4s. But you're right, he does exile the Grim Flayer. Back to Lucas, draws a land. That one I'm sure he's happy to see. Liliana pluses, Grim Flayer attacks.
And Lucas floated a Mind Rag Demon on the last attack. See if he still wants to keep that.
So it's still on top. It's on top right now.
Brad just has instant sorcery in the graveyard, so there's no threat. Well, it's not too much of a threat of Ishkana, just a 5-mana 3/5. You know, this isn't a bad draft deck, so that's manageable. Lucas still has a Grasp of Darkness.
Keeps 2 on top, puts Transgress in the graveyard. 4 mana from Brad. This is Mind Rack Demon of his own. 4 cards into the yard. 5th land into play, passes. And now you got to start looking at the graveyard for Brad. It's got enchantment, land, sorcery, instant.
I believe creature was hit there as well. Looks like Emrakul hanging out.
So Liliana plus Grasp takes care of the demon. A 4/4 Flayer swings in. Top 3 cards again. Delirium's at 5 for Lucas. And actually, we got to watch out here. Brad's life total down to 8.
Yeah. He's under serious pressure here.
For a game so much about the big creatures, Grim Flayer continues to shine. This card might just be good in all matchups, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly leave them in. A lot of pressure on Brad to have Ishkana right now.
And here is Liliana, the last hope from Brad. -2s.
I suppose if he could find his own Grim Flayer, he could try to present a blocker.
And he'll get back a Ishkana. That's a blocker. Land 6 and a pass.
Brad would probably be just fine if the Grim Flayer spends the turn attacking the Liliana here.
So we're counting Delirium here. Creature, land, enchantment, sorcery, instant. So 5 card types in the yard for Brad. And yes, there's an Emrakul in the graveyard. So both Grapples and Lilianas can get that back. 4 card types over on Lucas Michaels' side. Remember, Lucas was on a Mulda 6 and Brad whiffed a Transgress. So it's like both players are playing down a card this game.
Oh, there's a significant difference there. As Lucas was casting Grim Flayer on 2, Brad was doing
Doing
nothing. He was
nothing.
discarding a card for 2 mana.
So Grim Flayer will put Brad Nelson down to 4. And Lucas may, if he just keeps some more kill spells on top, could just traditionally aggro Brad out here. Just kill the blockers. I mean, Ishkana would be harder to kill, but not impossible. And especially not if there's a Mind Rack Demon hanging out in Lucas's hand, which I believe there is.
Presenting 2 4-power creatures, that would be 2 lethal attackers.
He's just going to pass, though. His last 2 cards are Grapple with the Past and Mindrak Demon. Looks like he's trying to set up some sort of end-step grapple play. And for Brad, his plays here is locked in. He's at 4, so he'll make blockers. It's Ishkana. He has Delirium. Liliana pluses on Grim Flayer, and he passes the turn.
Yeah, Brad showed him the Ishkana, so.
And also importantly, a 7th land for Brad. 5 card types in the graveyard. We are now at the point where land Emrakul is a possibility. Liliana pluses on Lucas' side, an Ishkana of his own.
Lucas only has 5 lands currently, but an activation of Ishkana would be lethal.
Yeah, I was wondering to see if he was going to make that land drop number 6. He did not. Which is actually kind of interesting because Lucas has scryed just, he's set up his draws just about every turn of the game.
Yeah, and he was coming off of a mulligan. He had very cheap spells initially, so the lands weren't important in the early stages of the game.
Yeah, it's more like you can't, you can't say, well, I didn't draw the lands when you were controlling your draw. Brad is going to -2 the Liliana to get back Emrakul and then cast it, Liliana adding the crucial extra count of Delirium so that Emrakul was castable. And a lot of times this match is a race to Emrakul, and Brad has won the race. He's at 4 to Lucas's 20, but he gets the promised end first. Is that going to be enough? We go to Lucas's turn. Brad's going to play it. The draw is Nissa Vital Force.
Brad's probably pretty happy that this was produced on the turn that he was controlling. There's no way he could. It looks like there's no untapped lands that could be grappled for. Theoretically, if Grapple could find an untapped land, you wouldn't even want to cast the demon. You really just want to mess up the -2 on the Liliana, mess up the grapple, and that's about the most damage that Brad can do outside of combat.
Yeah, I mean, in combat he can get rid of just about everything and make the grapple miss. That might be enough.
There's some argument for eating the Hissing Quagmire.
Sure. I mean, Lucas's worst, the resource he's shortest on is mana. So Brad could, activate the Quagmire, maybe -2 it with the Liliana.
And once you eat the Quagmire in combat, the grapple is a lot less powerful. He doesn't have the mana to effectively leverage it. It will take Brad some time to actually close this game. Of course, Emrakul is a 2-turn clock.
So here's a new one. Brad's going to cast Grapple, getting back Evolving Wilds. Then he's going to fail to find, but wants to look at Lucas's deck.
I like it. Looks like Lucas had some masterpieces in the shuffle there, those Noxious Gear Hulks.
Oh, nice. Okay. Brad will plus the Liliana. Maybe on the Grim Flayer to finish that one off. Or could be on a Spider. So an attack with Lucas is going to swing creatures. Loses 3 spiders. Okay, and actually Brad left Lucas with the Ishkana. So this much makes sense. Lucas, 1 spider got double blocked by spiders. Another one got single blocked and shrunk. A 3rd one swung into the Ishkana. And then the Grim Flayer swung into Emrakul. So now we go back to Lucas's turn, and this one is his own turn. Lost most of his creatures to that Emrakul. He's going to have to rebuild 5 lands in play. Draws for the turn.
With the hand of Nissa and Mindrak Demon, neither of those are particularly exciting here. The Demon seems worse than the Nissa, though it's not clear what the Nissa can do. The -3 seems most relevant here.
You need to just be playing to find an Emrakul or a way to deal with Brad's Emrakul. It's a 2-turn clock.
It's a little embarrassing to Nissa -3 to get a land back, but it looks to be among Lucas's better options.
Lucas contemplating here. He's got this Nissa Vital Force. The +1 not going to do much, not in the face of Emrakul. -3, return a permanent from your graveyard to hand. It's a very expensive -3, but it might just be his play. And he will cast the Planeswalker. But he'll use the plus. This land becomes a 5/5.
Yeah, with 2 Planeswalkers this high on loyalty, and perhaps Brad will send the Emrakul towards one of the Planeswalkers instead of Lucas's life total. And Brad does have to be mindful of his own life total. He's at 4.
Lucas just pluses both Planeswalkers for loyalty. No real value on the abilities. We go back to Brad's turn now. He's at 4, so he has to play some amount of defense, but Lucas is at 20 and Brad has a 13-13. It will not take many attacks.
In 11-12, Liliana did plus
You
on
are
it.
right, it's an 11-12.
The Ishkana on Lucas's side can soak up 5 damage. But it would still be enough to be lethal on either of those Planeswalkers, or still be a 2-turn clock on, well, it would be a 3-turn clock on Lucas.
Brad's kind of weighing this one out here. So he has 7 mana, so the ability to activate Ishkana. Figuring out just how much blocking power he needs. He wants to make sure that his clock is 2 turns and not 3. And a tap of 6 mana from Brad is going to be the Gear Hulk, and it's going to take care of Lucas's land. And this is a play from Lucas that may have... Yeah, so he's going to lose his land, and that's so bad for him.
So the motivation for making the land into a 5/5 can block more of these spiders, the Ishkana stuff, prevent his life total a little bit there. Now the downside here is you turn that land into the creature, now the Gear Hulk can take care of it. The Gear Hulk killing the Ishkana was already a big problem, so that's sort of minimal. You lose your mana source, that's a problem. Though, you know, reasonably, the Nissa's best role was likely just to get a land back with the -3 on the previous turn, just to build up his mana.
And the thing is that you can't actually, you have to target one of your own lands with the +1. It's not like Lucas could have, you know, plussed it in the way that a lot of times you'll see players, you know, plus a Liliana,
Well,
right?
+1 do nothing was a total losing line, because then the Gear Hulk's just killing the Ishkana, you've got nothing for your Nissa. That's just bad news all around.
And this is better, I suppose. So they swing. Ishkana will eat a spider, and Lucas takes, I believe, 15. Yeah, he drops to 5. Here's a draw. Now down to 4 lands. He's not going to be able to swing back. He has 4 lands. Emrakul is not going to be on the way, and this turn should send Brad Nelson into the 6-0 bracket.
And this game has started out with those early Grimflayer beatdowns, and it looked like they were going to matter a lot, but at the end of the game, that's just not what the matchup's about.
And there's the hand. So Brad Nelson 2-0 takes the mirror there. You know, what I have to think here is if you have these Grimflayers, you have to decide what you're putting on top of your deck, and maybe the answer is just lands.
Yep, I believe that Lucas you end up floating a Mind Rack Demon. It was a spell that really didn't matter.
Both games, too. He had in the first game as well.
Yeah, prioritize just making land drops more highly. You could try to keep pace, maybe get Ishkana of his own, build up towards Emrakul, because 2-mana 2/2s, even if they can become 4/4s, they're just really not what this game ended up being about, and really not what the matchup is going to resolve with.
All right, so Brad Nelson moves to